You're listening to Monday Matters, a Principal Matters podcast production.
Hi, Principal Matters friends. This is Will Parker, along with Dr. Jen Schwanke for another Monday Matters episode. Jen, each week we've been sharing, for the last several weeks, content from your new book, Trusted, Trust Pillars, Trust Killers, and the Secrets to Successful Schools. And if anyone's listening to this show, and you didn't hear the one from last week, I would suggest you go back and listen, because we spent that entire time talking about chapter 6, first half, the trust killers that we often practice that are just deteriorating trust with students. But we wanted to flip that coin and talk about how just as important to recognize the dangers is to just embrace the positives. So let's talk about that, Jen, as we step into this week and talk to leaders about what are some of the pillars of trust that we need to be building with students.
Right. I'm so glad we're focusing on students, because that's why we're here, right? And so this chapter was my favorite to write because it brought me back to what we do and why we do it. And, I think it's so critical because this world is really unpredictable these days. It's chaotic, and it's so many unexpected things happen, right? So we want our schools to be predictable places. We want them to be calm, and we want students to know that they can count on us. And by us, I mean teachers, principals, staff. Many of our students have very little that they can trust. And so we want adults to have that, to be the primary role model for trust. So here's the thing. I want to dip into geek mode a little bit with research. Mm-hmm. Research tells us that when students trust their teachers and their principal, behavior referrals are lowered. Mm-hmm. Instructional interruptions are lessened. Mm-hmm. Engagement in school is increased. So there's a reason to think about trust. This
Stop
isn't
right
just
there, Jen. Right. Yeah, just stop, because what I love about this part of your book is we know from practice these things are true. And so thank you, Dr. Schwanke, for digging into the research. And so I just want to say it again. When students trust their teachers, you said 3 things. Say those again.
Yep. Behavior referrals are lowered. Mm-hmm. Instructional interruptions are lessened. Mm-hmm. And student engagement is increased. And this is research from Gregory and Ripsky in 2008. And, what we have learned is that, figures of authority for students, if they trust them, they're more likely to engage in academic class and lose instructional time. So it matters. This isn't just because Jen Schwanke wanted to write a book. This is real.
Mm-hmm. It is. And man, Jen, you're just already, my mind's going back to the classroom and the little habit I used to always have at the beginning of every class to say to students, I'm so glad you're here. And I remember for years after that became my habit, waiting the first few days, because usually kids weren't polite enough, or kids weren't confident enough to do this early on, but usually a couple of days in, they'd get their confidence and somebody would raise their hand and they'd say, why are you glad we're here? And I was just waiting for it. And I would say, because, right. I know there's compulsory ed laws that require you to be here, but you chose to step in my classroom today. And I'm just like, this is a privilege and an honor for me to be able to teach you and to instruct you. And that's why I'm glad you're here.
Right.
And so Jen, in that spirit of trying to build that kind of trust with the people with whom we're engaging, what are the pillars that you've unpacked in this part of the book of just good reminders for leaders, not just teachers, but all educators to be building with students?
Right. So the first is showing commitment. And I was just talking about this with my friend Greta, who's a principal in El Paso. And Greta is, I did some executive coaching sessions with Greta, and I actually fired myself, Will, because she is such a strong principal. We were going to do 6 sessions, and I said, Greta, you don't need me. You're fine. So I said, I've never fired myself from coaching before, but Greta is all in. She is available. She is, as the kids say, here for it, right? And this is the showing the commitment to the school. You want to ask questions. What are you learning? What do you like about school? This is being in the hallways during class change, referring students to a staff person who can help them, showing them that, like they do, you value extracurriculars and elective coursework, art, music, PE, library, technology, being present during arrival and dismissal. sitting with kids when their parents are running late, eating lunch with groups of students, just being there for it. And I can feel the speech bubbles above the head of our listeners. Like, how do I have time? This doesn't necessarily mean hours of work. It might mean a minute or two, just connecting with the kids and letting them know that you're all in.
Oh my gosh. It's what it's all about. And so, in fact, Jen, I will just say this. If these aren't the commitments that you have to your day as a school leader, you are not going to have a lot of joy.
That's right.
This is where the joy is, right here.
Right.
Keep going.
Exactly. The next one is being authentic. And I tell this story a lot. When I first was hired as an assistant principal, I thought I had to fit a certain mold, right? So I went to Talbot's and I bought all the tweed and I bought all the heels, and I was going to be what I thought a principal should be. Over time, I have let myself become who I am as a leader, and I find myself being much more authentic because kids don't look at me as, this lady in tweed. They look at me as Mrs. Schwanke and, someone that's approachable. And so, do the silly things, dress up for dress up days. I never did PJ day. I could not make that jump. But, if there's a big football game, wear the shirt, right? Participate in the annual walkathon. Grill the hot dogs on field day. Be authentic, be who you are, and show that professionalism plus vulnerability. If something is upsetting, your school's going through a crisis, it's okay that you are upset as well. So we don't want to be made of marble. We want to be a human being.
Yeah. Let them pour that bucket on your head.
That's right. Yeah.
We used to have this digital imaging class where the teacher every year would assign students to take images of their teachers and educators and make them into superheroes.
Right.
And the first or second time they tried to do that with me, it was just embarrassing. So I actually went back to her and said, hey, suggest to your kids next time they try to do me, do Mr. Bean.
Right.
I don't know if you know Mr. Bean, but he is the geekiest British comedian I've ever met. And because I was like, dude, let's be authentic. If you're going to make me look like somebody famous, then you better make me Mr. Bean. And they loved it. And we hung it on the door of my office. So show commitment, be authentic. What's next?
The next one is engaging sincerely. So principals have to be at stuff, right? They have to go to the football games, they have to go to the music concert, they have to go to the PTO meeting. And I know that these things can be, one more thing. And a lot of times they're in the evening, you're exhausted, you just want to go home and have a sandwich and go to bed. Here's what I think. I think when you do engage, you have to do it completely. There are times you can disengage. So here's an example. The high school football game that I'm going to attend tonight. I'm going to be all in the beginning, first quarter, up to the half. I'm going to watch the band. I'm going to talk to people. Then I'm probably going to go on up to the top of the stands, and I may check my email. I may check my text, that kind of thing. And then I'll go back down and be completely engaged at the end. What I think turns people off is when you go to the event. It's clear you don't want to be there. You're on your phone the whole time. You're leaning against the wall, only talking to one person or whatever. Those are the times that kids will say, no, my principal never goes to things, because they don't see you actually engaging. And so participate, go on the field trips, and pay attention when the docent talks about the history of that building, right? Immerse yourself with the students when you're there, not just watching what's going on in the classroom, but, stand there. Stand in the cafeteria line with kids. Go to club and activity meetings, and, we don't want to just say, what you guys doing, but really immerse into it. Spend time in the study areas. I love to go to study hall and sit down with my laptop and work right alongside kids. If it's a situation where there's play, like you said, the water over the head in the dunk tank, jump into staff student tournaments, join a game of Gaga Pit. I, by the way, managed to get through all of my years as a principal without having a pie in my face, but that's one of my claims to fame. But, show up, clean, organize, carry the chairs, that kind of stuff. Immerse.
Oh, my gosh, Jen. I love all of these. Keep going.
Okay. Next would be being clear and honest in communications. Being directly engaging with students increases the sense of accountability that we have, and really does build the trust with students. And so, if there's something that doesn't make sense to students, to communicate it clearly is so helpful. Here's a great, silly example, but most principals will recognize this. Federal lunch programs require that kids get milk. Some kids don't want milk. Why are they making me get milk? This doesn't make sense. we could say, I don't know, just take the milk. Or we could sit down at the cafeteria table with the kids and say, well, let me tell you why it's important that you have the milk. First of all, it's the law. Second of all, the poor cashier who's checking you out, she's not being mean. She just wants you to take your milk. And you know what? It's also good for you. So maybe you drink the milk. A silly example, but we want to be a straight shooter. We want to be clear and understanding of their perspective, but just to communicate in ways that they can understand.
Jen, I've told the story before where we had a lockdown one day in school. It was an unsafe situation happening off campus, so we'd gotten the word to please lock down until it was clear. So we made the announcement. We're going to have a lockdown.
Right.
And we'll let you know when things are clear. And my phone rang, and it was one of my kids. It was my daughter, Maddie.
Right.
And she's a student at my school, and I'm a little frustrated, but I answer it. And I'm like, Maddie, you know you're not supposed to call me in the middle of something like this. And she's like, Dad, I'm scared. What's going on? And at that moment, I realized I have not communicated to anyone why we're doing this lock. I just said, we're going to do lockdown. We'll call you when we're clear. So I thought, okay, what is going through the minds of all my kids right now? And they're probably going to be texting to their parents. So I got back on and said, students, just to give you some context, there's a situation happening off campus. Police are involved. Nothing is unsafe here right now. But as soon as we get the clear from them, we'll open back up and long story short, I had several parents reach back to me later telling me, thank you so much for what you did today because it made my child feel comforted. And it was all Maddie's fault because she had because she held the mirror up to me that I had not been clear. I thought I had been clear, but I wasn't as clear as I could have been.
That's right. Okay, keep going.
Yeah.
Okay. Being consistent. Mm-hmm. So I have two prongs to being consistent. The first is being consistent with student discipline, and the second is being consistent with policy enforcement. And here's what I mean by that. I don't mean everybody gets the exact same thing. I mean that we follow due process in the same ways. We investigate in the same ways. We use our discretion in a way that doesn't show favoritism, that doesn't reward clicks, that doesn't allow for a non-standard disciplinary process, and then communicate with staff and parents in a sequential and thorough way. I don't want anybody to think that I'm saying that every kid gets the exact same consequence for the exact same thing at the exact same time. That's not at all what it is. But, we want student behaviors. Whenever there's some sort of a discipline, we want the student and the family and the teachers to say, okay, I don't necessarily like it, maybe they might say, but it was fair and it followed the process. So that's where, those processes and systems are so important.
And there's a system for that fairness too.
That's right.
Because sometimes things aren't being implemented consistently because you haven't created a system for doing it. So if you're already feeling like overwhelmed, then just stop and think about the system you've created that ensures as much consistency as possible. Keep going, Jen.
Right. And so then the sister to that is policy enforcement. We want to be really consistent with that. Somebody said to me a couple of weeks ago, well, this policy is, ignoring this policy is fine right up until it isn't. And I said, well, I don't know that it's fine to ignore a policy right up until it isn't. We need to consistently enforce our policies. Students find that their schools, their teachers, their principals are more trustworthy if policies are enforced all the time. So here's a great example. I spoke with a principal in Michigan last week, and he said, I've got parents all up in arms because of parking passes at the high school. We've always said no sophomores can park there, but then we kind of let some start to park there, and then we have parents mad because we're stopping it, but we're letting the original sophomores park there. So I said, so if I'm hearing you correctly, the policy is no sophomores park in this lot. But as sophomores start to get their driver's license, you have an increasing problem. By December, you have a big problem because all of your sophomores want to park and you're out of parking spots. Do I have that right? And he's like, well, yeah, but it's not a problem in September and October. I'm like, but you understand what you've done. You've taken the toothpaste out of the tube and now you're trying to put it back in. So a parent saying, wait, my kid has parked in this lot from September, October, November, December, and now you're telling them they can't drive to school? So if it's a policy, enforce it. If it's not enforceable, it shouldn't be a policy.
Oh, preach it.
Right.
No, I'm not even going to comment on that. I just let it keep going.
Right. And then my final one, this is my trust pillar, is handling crisis with calm. So this is I think I've told this story before, but I love to run to a problem and fix it, right? Put on my super cape and go fix the problem. I was visiting a school once, and a colleague I very much respect, his name was Scott. He, over the walkie-talkie, had said, "Scott, we need you in room 137 now." And I was like, "Okay, let's go." And he picked up his keys and he picked up his phone and he walked slowly. I was like, "Scott, we have to hurry. Let's go." And he said, "Jen, it is not going to make a difference if I get there 14 seconds sooner. What is going to make a difference is if I walk in this room and I am calm and I'm ready to help." Like, did you see what I did? My speech cadence also slowed there.
That's right.
And I calmed right down and I said, "Scott, it's a Christmas miracle. This is amazing. Like, you approach with calm. Then when you walk in a room, people don't think, oh, there's another fire to put out. They think the person I trust just walked in."
I love that. Dr. Barb Sorrells, who's I'm a big fan of her work on trauma-informed strategies. She does a lot of work with pre-K, elementary, but also with older students too. And I've sat through her trainings several times. She was a great consultant when I did work at the State Principals Association, but she's also worked with a lot of schools in the Oklahoma area. And Jen, she actually shows the science that backs up just what you said.
Right.
That when you can slow the tempo of your voice, of your actions, then you actually can lower the anxiety of a room.
That's
and
right.
So what you're saying, handling crisis with calm, is not just a good suggestion.
That's
I'm
right.
going full circle to the beginning of today's episode.
That's
it's
right.
backed up by research.
That's right.
That we actually can more successfully handle a really difficult situation when we can stay calm or create calmness.
That's right. And watching Scott pick up his keys, attach his walkie to his belt, it calmed me. It's amazing. So yeah, there's my trust pillars.
Oh, I love it. Well, Principal Matters listeners, I just want to encourage you as you are stepping into your day, as you're stepping into your own moments of learning. If you haven't picked up a copy of Jen's new book, Trust Pillars, Trust Killers, and the Secrets of Successful Schools, you need to do it. And Jen, I also know that lately you've been inviting people to your newsletter. Tell folks what they can find if they subscribe to your new newsletter.
Yes, I'm having so much fun with this, you guys. It's Principal Problems with Dr. Jen, and every Wednesday there's just something I'm ruminating on, something about being a principal and the problems we face. So go to my website at jenschwanke.com, and you can sign up to receive that little tidbit every Wednesday morning.
Well, and if you're not already checking your emails for the updates from our show and the newsletter from Principal Matters, then you need to do that as well. So go to williamdparker.com and sign up today to receive those updates. And Jen, this is coming out September 15-ish, I think, somewhere around there. So I know you and I will both be engaging in the fall and spring with some PD. So stay. You can check out our websites for information on those things too, or follow us on social media. We'd love to stay connected with you. And if you're ever in a situation where you'd like feedback one-on-one, reach out to either one of us. We'd love to answer your questions or set up a reflection session with you. But until next time, thank you for doing what matters, and we hope you have a great week. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Monday Matters.